Chapter 1. The Queen of Fabrications. Dara Hayes knew how to hold an audience. She perched on the edge of a cafeteria table, legs crossed at the knee, idly twirling the straw in her iced coffee as she wove her latest masterpiece of deception. "Okay, so picture this," she said, lowering her voice just enough to make her audience lean in. "It's 1 a.m., and I'm at this stupid exclusive after-party in the hills, like, invite only, security at the gate, if you're not someone don't bother showing up kind of thing, when suddenly, out of nowhere, this guy walks in." Chloe, her best friend since freshman year, gasped on cue. Wait, was it someone famous? Dara let the moment stretch, just enough tension to keep them hungry. She had this down to a science, how to build the story, how to control it. "You guys," she exhaled dramatically, "it was Jace freaking Carter." The table erupted. "No way! Shut up! You're lying!" Dara grinned, taking a slow sip of her coffee like she wasn't absolutely thriving off this reaction. "Swear to God," she said, "I was literally standing by the bar and she motioned vaguely, flipping her long auburn hair over her shoulder, "just walked up and started talking to me." Chloe practically vibrated with excitement. "What did he say?" Dara let out a soft, knowing laugh, shaking her head. "Honestly, I barely even remember. I was so caught off guard." She flashed a sly smile. "But I know he asked for my number." The table exploded again. "Are you serious? You got Jace Carter's number? Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Dara shrugged, feigning modesty. But inside, she felt the warmth of their admiration like a drug hitting the bloodstream. This was what she lived for. The attention, the awe, the way people clung to her words like they were gospel. The best part? They would never ever know it was a lie. Jace Carter didn't know she existed. She had never been to the hills. There was no after-party, no security, no bar, but it didn't matter. People believed what they wanted to believe. And Dara gave them exactly what they wanted. "Okay, wait, Chloe said, grabbing Dara's wrist. "You have to text him. Like, right now." Dara's heart stuttered. She recovered fast, her expression slipping into an effortless smirk. "God, Chloe, no. What kind of thirst would that be?" She shook her head. "He texted me first, obviously, but I didn't answer. Gotta keep him waiting." Chloe screamed, "Dara, you're insane!" Dara just winked. The moment the last bell rang, Dara made sure to leave with purpose. Shoulders back, head high, moving through the halls like she belonged at the top. People watched her. They always did. She walked straight out the front doors, waved half-heartedly at Chloe, and turned left. Like she was going home. Like she had one. Once she was out of sight, she slipped behind the old brick bookstore on the corner, checking over her shoulder before ducking into the alley. No one saw. Good. She unzipped her backpack, yanked out a plain black hoodie and an old pair of sneakers, and changed right there behind the dumpster. Her perfectly curated outfit, today's aesthetic, laid-back rich girl, was stuffed inside her bag. Within minutes, Dara Hayes didn't exist anymore. She wasn't the girl from the party. She wasn't the girl with Jace Carter's number. She wasn't anyone. She was just another kid catching the 4:30 bus to the Weston's house. The Weston house was a monstrosity. 3 stories, glass panels, a front gate so high it could keep God out. Mrs. Weston barely glanced up when Dara stepped inside. "You're late," she said flatly. Dara wasn't, but she didn't argue. "Sorry, Mrs. Weston." "The kids are in the playroom," Mrs. Weston continued, tapping at her phone. "Dinner's at 6. Make sure Lucy eats all her vegetables, and I want Adam's homework finished before the iPad comes out." Dara nodded. "Got it." Mrs. Weston sighed, already bored of talking to her. "Try not to be useless, Dara." Then she was gone. Dara let out a slow breath. It wasn't the worst thing Mrs. Weston had said to her, but it still stung in that place she kept locked up, the part of her that still sometimes wished she mattered. The kids were exhausting. Lucy was 6 and thought Dara was her personal servant. Adam was 9, already an expert in passive-aggressive insults. But she put on a smile, because that's what you did when you were Dara Hayes' professional liar. She made Lucy's peanut butter sandwich into the shape of a cat. She helped Adam with his math homework, even though he rolled his eyes the whole time. She scrubbed plates and counters while the kids watched TV, because if she didn't, Mrs. Weston would throw a fit about filthy help. And then the doorbell rang. Dara froze, dish in hand. The Westons never had visitors this late. "Can you get that?" Lucy called from the couch. Dara wiped her hands, straightened her hoodie, and went to open the door. And there, standing on the doorstep, was Tom. Her stomach dropped. He wore a gray hoodie, hands shoved in his pockets, expression unreadable. But his eyes, the way he looked at her, said everything. He knew. Dara stared, pulse hammering. This isn't happening. Tom blinked, slow, then smirked. Hey, he said, small world. Chapter 2, The Truth Knows Your Name. Dara's grip tightened on the door frame. Her brain scrambled for an explanation, some rational reason why Tom Mercer, the new guy, the senior with the stupid smirk, was standing on the doorstep of the Weston house. But there was no rational reason, only one that scared the hell out of her. He knows. Tom shifted, casual as ever, like he hadn't just punched a hole straight through her carefully built life. Hey, Dara, he said, voice easy. Too easy. Like this wasn't the single most terrifying moment of her existence. She made herself smile, flipping her hair over her shoulder. Fake it. Play it cool. Tom, right? She said, tilting her head like she was just now placing him. From school? His mouth quirked. He wasn't buying it. Yeah, he said. And you're from... He lifted an eyebrow, eyes flicking toward the cheap hoodie she was wearing. The hills, right? The mansion? The designer bags? Dara felt something ugly coil in her stomach. He was testing her, seeing how far she'd go, so she did what she did best. She lied. Uh-huh, she said, voice light, airy. I was just... She gestured vaguely behind her, like she was about to pull out some ridiculous excuse, just dropping off a friend's kid, just picking something up for my mother. But Tom wasn't stupid. And worse, he wasn't buying it. The sound of running footsteps saved her. Adam came skidding into the entryway, barefoot and sticky-handed, eyes lighting up when he saw Tom. Tom! Adam grinned, throwing himself at him. Dude, where have you been? We never see you anymore. Dara's stomach plummeted. Tom knew Adam. He wasn't just some random visitor, which meant he knew exactly who Dara really was. Yeah, sorry, kid, Tom said, ruffling Adam's hair like they were family. Been busy. Your mom asked me to pick you up for the weekend. Adam groaned dramatically. I wanted to stay here. Tom smirked. Trust me, you'll survive. Dara barely heard them. She was too busy drowning. This was so much worse than she'd thought. Tom didn't just know the family. He was part of it. He had proof. Tom looked back at her, and for the first time there was something different in his gaze. Not amusement, not just knowing. Something sharp, curious. Dara needed to end this conversation before it could go any further. She pasted on her best bored expression, shifting her weight like she had better things to do. Well, nice seeing you, Tom, she said breezily. But some of us have jobs, so... Tom just looked at her, held her gaze. Then slowly he smiled. Right, he said, easy. Wouldn't want to keep you from your important work. Dara's nails bit into her palm. He was enjoying this. Before she could think of something to say, something sharp, something cutting, Tom turned back to Adam. Come on, kid, let's go. Adam groaned again, but followed, waving lazily as they stepped out the door. Dara didn't breathe until the gate clicked shut behind them. Then, with her heart slamming against her ribs, she locked the door and collapsed against it. Her hands were shaking. This was bad. This was so bad. The next day, there was nowhere to hide. Dara had always been good at ignoring reality. That was the trick to a good lie. You had to believe it so hard that reality didn't matter. So when she walked into school the next morning, she told herself nothing had changed. She was still Dara Hayes, the girl everyone adored, the legend, the girl who had been at an exclusive party last weekend, who had designer clothes in her closet, who had everything figured out. She wasn't the girl who scrubbed dishes for the Westons. She wasn't the girl who slept in a laundromat when it rained. And she definitely wasn't the girl Tom Mercer had seen last night. Her friends were waiting at her usual spot near the lockers. Chloe lit up when she saw her. Dara, finally! We've been waiting for... And then she noticed. Chloe's brow furrowed, her eyes scanning Dara's face like she was searching for something. You okay? She asked. Dara froze. Chloe never asked her that, not because she didn't care, but because Dara never let people wonder. She never let them see anything other than what she wanted them to. Dara forced a laugh, brushing past her toward the lockers. Of course I'm okay, she said, rolling her eyes. Why wouldn't I be? Chloe hesitated, then she shrugged. I don't know, you just seem kinda... off, Dara scoffed, tossing her bag into her locker. Please, I'm thriving. The words felt hollow. She slammed the locker shut, too hard, too loud. Okay, Chloe said slowly. She didn't look convinced. Oh, by the way, have you met the new guy yet? Dara's stomach twisted. She didn't have to turn around. She already knew. Yo, new kid, someone called. Come sit with us. Footsteps. Too calm, too casual. Dara closed her eyes for half a second, steeling herself before she turned. And there he was, Tom Mercer, standing way too comfortably next to Chloe, smirking right at her. Dara's jaw clenched. He hadn't said a word yet, but the way he was looking at her, it was like he'd already won. She wasn't about to let that happen, so she did what she always did. She put on a smile and went on the attack. Tom, right? She said smoothly, just loud enough for the others to hear. We met yesterday, yeah? At school? His smirk grew. At school? He echoed. Dara's fingers twitched. Shut up. Don't say it. Don't you dare say it. Tom's head tilted, all mock innocence. You sure about that? Dara's blood went ice cold. She held his gaze, expression unmoving, but she felt it. The tiniest crack. She had spent years perfecting this life, and Tom Mercer was one sentence away from burning it down. So she did the only thing she could. She leaned in, voice low. If you tell anyone, she whispered, I will destroy you. Tom blinked. Then, to her absolute horror, he grinned. Yeah, he said, voice just as low. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Dara stared, pulse hammering, and then Tom, cocky, stupid, infuriating Tom, shrugged. Well, he murmured, I guess we'll find out. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Dara Hayes, queen of fabrications for the first time in her life, completely speechless. Chapter 3. The Game Begins. Dara wasn't scared. At least, that's what she told herself as she walked into fourth period and saw Tom Mercer already waiting in the seat next to hers. He wasn't supposed to be in this class. She knew that because she knew everyone. But there he was, sitting in her row, stretched out like he belonged there, like he belonged anywhere. And worse? He was smirking. Dara exhaled slowly through her nose, shoving down the unease curling in her stomach. Fine. He wanted to play games? She would win. Dara swept into the seat beside him, legs crossed, movements fluid, confident, controlled. She made sure to barely look at him, like he was nothing, like he didn't matter. Tom tapped his pencil against the desk. So, he said, voice lazy like he was talking about the weather. Have you told your friends yet? Dara didn't blink. Told them what? That you spend your nights washing dishes and getting yelled at by Mrs. Weston. Her nails dug into her notebook. She didn't flinch. Instead, she laughed, leaning back in her chair, tapping her pen against her lips like this whole thing was a joke. You know, she said, tilting her head, it's kind of pathetic how obsessed you are with me. I get it, I'm stunning, but maybe try playing it cool? Tom huffed a laugh, shaking his head. You really don't break character, do you? Dara smiled, sharp. Not for people like you. Tom opened his mouth, probably to say something infuriating, but Mr. Garrison started lecture mode, and Dara turned to face the front like he wasn't even there, like she wasn't aware of every breath he took next to her. Dara made it exactly 1 hour before Tom struck again. She was sitting with Chloe and the rest of her usual crew, flipping through her phone, throwing out half-listened-to responses to their conversation when it happened. Tom sat down, at her table, like it was nothing. Chloe blinked. Hi? Tom flashed his trademark smirk. Hey, mind if I sit? Dara's fingers tightened around her phone. Mind if you sit? Tom Mercer had been at this school for 5 minutes and he was already testing her control. Chloe, completely oblivious to the high-stakes war happening right in front of her, glanced at Dara for approval. Dara flashed her most charming smile. Of course, she said sweetly. I love charity work. Tom just laughed. Appreciate it. He slid into the seat across from her, picking up an unopened bag of chips from the center of the table like it belonged to him. And just like that, he was in. The table adjusted for him, like they would for anyone Dara allowed in her orbit, which made her hate him even more. So, Tom said, popping a chip into his mouth, I was thinking. Dara arched a brow. That's a first, Chloe snorted. Tom just grinned. I was thinking, he continued, unbothered, we should hang out more. Dara froze. What? Chloe leaned forward, suddenly interested. Wait, what? Tom shrugged, still too casual. I mean, Dara and I have so much in common. Same school, same classes, same double life. Dara kicked him under the table, hard. Tom coughed into his fist, but his eyes were laughing. Dara smiled, deadly. Oops, she said sweetly. Slipped. Tom coughed again, grinning. Right, anyway. You guys know each other? Chloe asked, eyes flicking between them. Dara opened her mouth, ready to lie, ready to bury this whole conversation before it started. But Tom beat her to it. Not really, he said smoothly, still watching Dara like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. But I'm sure we'll get to know each other real well soon. Dara's stomach twisted. Chloe raised an eyebrow. That sounds suspicious. Does it? Tom said. Dara rolled her eyes, forcing a light laugh. God, you guys are so dramatic. Tom's just being weird because I might have rejected him yesterday. Chloe's jaw dropped. Wait, what? Tom blinked, then let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. That's how we're playing this? Dara shrugged, smiling innocently. Gotta say, it's kind of embarrassing for you. Tom leaned forward, elbows on the table, dropping his voice just for her. You're good, he murmured. Dara's smirk didn't waver. I know. But inside, she was starting to sweat. The moment lunch ended, Dara grabbed Tom's wrist and dragged him outside, away from prying eyes. She shoved him against the brick wall, stepping in close, voice low and dangerous. Listen to me, she hissed. Tom looked more amused than intimidated. I'm listening, she gritted her teeth. I don't know what your deal is, but if you think you can just waltz in here and start poking around my life, you're wrong. Tom tilted his head, studying her. Why? He asked. Because people will find out the truth? Dara's heart slammed against her ribs. She hated that word, the truth, like it was something solid, something real, something that could actually hurt her. She took a breath, steeling herself. I don't care what you know, she said, voice even, controlled, because you're not going to say a word. Tom lifted an eyebrow. You sure about that? Dara smiled, but this time there was nothing sweet about it. If you do, she whispered, I'll make your life hell. Tom exhaled, shaking his head, still so damn amused. You really think you're in control here, don't you? Dara stepped even closer, nose almost brushing his. I know I am. Tom looked down at her, not mocking, not laughing, just watching, calculating, and then, after a long moment, he grinned. Guess we'll see then. And just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving Dara standing there for the second time in 2 days, feeling like she'd already lost. Chapter 4. Cracks in the Foundation. Dara was losing control. She could feel it, like a hairline fracture in glass, invisible at first, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. And Tom Mercer? He wasn't just watching the crack. He was tapping the glass, waiting for it to shatter. She hated him. She hated the way he smirked at her like he knew something no one else did. She hated the way he wasn't afraid of her, when everyone else fell in line. But mostly, she hated the way he made her feel seen, like she wasn't just a story she made up, like she was real. And that was unacceptable. By the time Dara made it through the school day, she was on high alert. She needed to fix this, to neutralize Tom before he did any damage. But first, she needed to deal with a different problem. You're weird today, Chloe announced as they walked to the parking lot after school. Dara laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Weird how? Chloe narrowed her eyes. Like, stressed. You're never stressed. Maybe I just didn't sleep, Dara lied smoothly. Chloe made a face. You always look flawless even on no sleep, so try again. Dara let out a dramatic sigh. Fine. If you must know, I've been dealing with a very annoying problem. Chloe's eyes lit up. Ooh, gossip, spill! Dara hesitated. This was the moment, the perfect chance to twist the narrative, get ahead of whatever Tom was planning. She just had to frame him first. It's Tom, she said, voice dropping into an exasperated sigh. Chloe stiffened. Tom Mercer? Yes, Dara groaned. He's obsessed with me. Chloe's eyebrows shot up. Wait, obsessed how? Dara rolled her eyes dramatically. Like randomly appears everywhere obsessed, like inserting himself into my conversations obsessed. She scoffed. And I swear he's making up things about me just to get under my skin. Chloe gasped, horrified. Ew, is he like a stalker? Dara let the question hang in the air. She didn't have to confirm it. Just let it sit. Who knows, she said breezily. I mean, some guys just can't handle rejection. Chloe nodded, completely sold. God, why are boys like this? Dara smiled. Hook, line, sinker. Now, if Tom tried to tell anyone about her real life, he'd look like a creep, a liar. He had no power over her. For the first time all day, Dara felt like herself again, until a voice shattered that feeling into pieces. Hey, Dara! She froze, because she knew that voice. She turned slowly, already bracing herself. Tom stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Chloe stiffened next to her. Oh my God. Dara forced herself to smile. Tom, she said, voice sugar-coated. Didn't see you there. His eyes flicked to Chloe, then back to Dara. Oh, he knew exactly what she'd just done. Really? He said, tilting his head. Because it kind of seems like you were just talking about me. Dara's heart slammed against her ribs. Chloe stepped closer to her. Is it true? She asked Tom. Are you following her around? Tom looked at Dara, and only Dara. For a second, he didn't say anything. Then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. Yeah, he said. I am. Dara's stomach dropped. Chloe made a disgusted sound. Oh, okay, no, that's not okay. Dara was still staring at Tom. He was watching her the way a lion watches a gazelle. Calm, patient, letting her dig her own grave. Right, Dara said quickly, taking control again. So you get it now, right? Chloe nodded, glaring at Tom. I can't believe I thought you were cool. Tom didn't look at her. His eyes never left Dara, and then he said something that nearly made her heart stop. Funny thing, though, he mused. I don't think I'm the only one hiding something. Dara's nails dug into her palm. Don't react. Don't let him win. Chloe frowned. What does that mean? Dara flashed her best, easy smile. Nothing, she said smoothly. Because Tom is leaving now. Tom held her gaze for one last second. Then finally he shrugged. Sure, he said, stepping back. See you later, Dara. He turned and walked off without looking back. But Dara stood there, heart hammering, stomach twisting, because she knew. This wasn't over, not even close. Chapter 5. The Edge of the Knife. Dara didn't sleep that night. She lay in her usual spot, the back corner of the 24-hour laundromat, curled up on top of an old blanket, watching the hum of the machines as they spun clothes that belonged to people with real homes, people who weren't hiding behind 1,000 different lies. She clutched her phone, scrolling through her messages, but her mind wasn't on the screen. It was on Tom Mercer, because for the first time in her life, someone saw through her. And worse, he wasn't running to tell everyone. He was playing a game Dara didn't know how to win. Dara walked into school prepared. Tom might think he had the upper hand, but she wasn't stupid. She had already started spinning the story. Chloe and half the school now believed Tom Mercer was just another pathetic guy who couldn't handle rejection. And as long as he didn't fight back, she could still control the narrative. She spotted Chloe by their lockers and immediately went into performance mode. Oh my God, Dara sighed, rolling her eyes. You won't believe what happened last night. Chloe turned, eyes wide. What? Dara leaned in, voice lowering like she was sharing a secret. Tom texted me. Chloe's jaw dropped. You're kidding! Dara shook her head, smiling like this was all so exhausting. I wish. He's like, obsessed. She made sure to pull up her phone, not to show any actual messages, but just to let Chloe see the screen and assume. Chloe fell for it immediately. That is so creepy. Should we, tell someone? Dara made a show of thinking about it. Then, sighing dramatically, she shook her head. No, I don't want to ruin his life or anything. Chloe gave her a look. Dara, he literally admitted to following you. Dara fought back a smirk. Exactly. By third period, the whispers had already spread. By lunch, Tom Mercer's name was linked to the word stalker. It was almost too easy. Dara sat back at her usual table, pleased with herself. She had won. And then, a shadow fell over the table. Tom Mercer. He had that same annoying, unreadable expression, hands in his pockets like he wasn't currently being vilified by half the school. Dara met his gaze, waiting for him to crack, but Tom just smirked. Then, in front of everyone, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen. A second later, Dara's own phone vibrated on the table. New message from Tom Mercer. Dara's stomach dropped. Slowly, she picked it up and unlocked it. There was only one message, a single screenshot. It was of the Weston's kitchen. A picture of Dara, her back to the camera, sleeves pushed up, washing dishes, and underneath a text. Maybe we should tell someone. The blood drained from Dara's face. She looked up, but Tom was already walking away. He hadn't said a word. He didn't have to, because for the first time ever, Dara wasn't in control, and it terrified her. Chapter 6. Checkmate. Dara sat frozen, her phone burning in her hand. The screenshot, the proof. Tom Mercer had proof, not just of where she worked, not just of what she did after school, proof that she wasn't who she said she was. Her ears buzzed, the lunchroom noise muffled and distant. Her friends were still talking, laughing, completely unaware that her entire world had just shifted beneath her feet. She forced herself to swallow, her pulse hammering. This wasn't just a threat. This was a warning. Tom had let her win, or at least think she had, just so he could pull the rug out from under her. And now, she was out of moves. Dara didn't go to her next class. She found Tom by the vending machines near the science hall, leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone like he wasn't the most dangerous person in her life right now. Her steps were measured, controlled. She refused to let him see the cracks. He looked up the second she stopped in front of him. Then, because of course he did, he smirked. "Hey, Dara," he said like they were just two friends casually catching up. Her jaw clenched. "You think this is funny?" she asked, voice low, sharp. Tom pocketed his phone, tilting his head. "Not really," he admitted, "but it is interesting." Dara's fingers curled into fists. He was enjoying this. "Delete it," she ordered. Tom raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Her nails dug into her palms. "Yes, I'm sure." He looked down like he was actually considering it. "See, here's the thing. You've been telling a lot of stories lately. You've got Chloe and half the school thinking I'm some kind of stalker. When really?" He leaned in, voice lowering. "You're the one with something to hide." Dara's throat was tight. "If you tell anyone," she whispered, "I swear—" Tom cut her off, voice almost amused. "You'll what?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because she had nothing. She had always had the upper hand, always been one step ahead, but Tom Mercer had seen through her from the start, and now he held the truth in his hands, and the truth was a weapon. Tom sighed, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Look, Dara, relax, I'm not going to tell anyone." Her heart stuttered. "What?" He shrugged. "I mean, I could. If I wanted to ruin you, I could have done it already." Dara narrowed her eyes. This was a trick. It had to be. "Then why haven't you?" she asked. Tom was quiet for a second. Then something changed. The amusement was still there, but it was lighter now, not cruel, not a threat, just curious. "Because I think I get it," he said simply. Dara stared at him. "Get what?" "Why you do it," Tom said, tilting his head. The lying, the stories, the whole Dara Hayes act. Something cold and sharp pressed against her ribs. She stepped back. "It's not an act." Tom just looked at her, and for the first time, Dara felt it. The weight of everything. She wasn't lying to just other people. She was lying to herself. Her fingers trembled. She shoved them into her jacket pockets before he could see. "You don't know anything about me," she muttered. "Maybe," Tom admitted, "but I know this. If you want me to keep quiet, you don't have to threaten me." Dara frowned. "Then what do I have to do?" Tom smiled, but it wasn't mocking this time. "You just have to tell me the truth." Chapter 7. The Truth Hurts. Dara's stomach twisted. She had spent years perfecting this. The mask, the stories, the life she had crafted from thin air and good timing. She had lied so much, so convincingly, that even she had started to believe it. But now Tom Mercer was standing in front of her, waiting for the truth, and Dara had no idea how to give it to him. She let out a slow, controlled breath. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" Tom shrugged. "Not really." "Liar." His mouth twitched. "That's rich coming from you." Dara clenched her jaw. "I don't owe you anything." Tom tilted his head, studying her. "You sure about that?" Dara folded her arms. "If you're expecting some sob story about my tragic life, you're not getting it." Tom's expression didn't change. "Okay," she frowned. "Okay?" "Yeah," he said. "I don't need a sob story. I just need you to stop pretending you're untouchable." Something sharp and defensive rose in her chest. "I'm not pretending," she said. Tom arched an eyebrow. "Aren't you?" Dara's nails bit into her palms. She had spent so long building the walls, making sure no one could see through them. But now, standing in front of Tom, she felt exposed. And she hated it. She hated him. But most of all, she hated that he was right. Dara took a step back. She needed to get out of this conversation before she cracked, before she let anything real slip through the cracks. "You don't get to analyze me," she said, forcing a mocking smirk. "Sorry, but I'm not some psychology experiment for you to solve." Tom exhaled, shaking his head. "You're exhausting." "That's the first thing you've said that's actually true," she shot back. Tom smirked, but then his expression shifted. "I mean it, though," he said, voice lower, more serious. "I'm not going to tell anyone, but you don't have to keep lying to me either." Dara froze. Lying was easy, lying was safe. But this was dangerous. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to scoff. "So what? We're just friends now? You think because you caught me in a lie, we're suddenly besties?" Tom huffed a laugh. "Friends? No, you'd probably stab me in my sleep." Dara's lips twitched. "Probably. But," Tom said, looking at her like he was seeing straight through every layer of armor, "I think we could have a truce." "A truce?" Dara narrowed her eyes. What kind of truce? Tom leaned in slightly, invading her space, but in a way that didn't feel like a challenge, in a way that felt like a dare. You stop lying to me, he said, and I won't tell anyone your secret. Dara's breath hitched, not because he was threatening her. He wasn't, but because he was offering her something else, a chance to just be. No pretending, no fabrications, just Dara. It was terrifying, it was impossible, and she had no idea why she wanted to say yes. Dara exhaled slowly, glancing around the hallway. No one was paying attention to them. For once, she wasn't performing. Her stomach clenched. If I stop lying, she said carefully, then you stop looking at me like that. Tom smirked. Like what? Like you know me. He was quiet for a second. Then in a voice so soft she almost didn't hear it, he said, Maybe I do. Dara's throat tightened. She wasn't ready for this. She didn't even know what this was. But when she looked at Tom, really looked at him, she realized something. He hadn't used her secret against her. He hadn't tried to ruin her. He hadn't even wanted power. He just wanted the truth. And for the first time, Dara wondered what it would be like to give it to someone. She let out a slow breath. Fine, she said finally. Truce. Tom smiled. Truce. And just like that, Dara Hayes told her first truth in years. And it scared her more than anything. Chapter 8. The Cost of Truth. Dara had spent so long inside her own lies that she wasn't sure how to exist outside of them. Even after she had agreed to Tom's stupid truce, she found herself falling back into old habits. Because the truth was ugly. And Dara Hayes was not ugly. By the next morning she had reconstructed the mask. Hair curled, outfit perfectly styled, smile in place. She strode into school like she owned it, like the events of yesterday had never happened. Chloe met her at the lockers, her usual bubbly, dramatic self. Okay, spill, Chloe said. Did he text you again? Dara blinked. What? Chloe sighed, exasperated. Tom, your weird little stalker, did he text you? Try to talk to you? What's the update? The words stung in a way they shouldn't have. Tom wasn't a stalker. Not really. He had her secrets in his hands, and instead of setting them on fire, he had given them back. But Chloe didn't know that, because Dara had made sure she wouldn't. Dara forced a careless laugh. I think he finally got the hint. Chloe beamed. Good. Guys like that just want attention. Dara's stomach twisted, because for the first time the lie didn't feel good. It didn't make her lightheaded with power, didn't give her that familiar thrill. Instead, it just made her tired. Fourth period rolled around and Tom was already in his seat. Dara ignored him. Not because she was afraid. She wasn't. Not because she cared. She didn't. But because she had to. If she looked at him, if she let him see, she knew he'd call her on it. The whole period passed in excruciating silence. Then just before the bell rang, Tom muttered, You're still lying. Dara snapped her head toward him, stomach plummeting. Tom didn't smirk, didn't taunt her. He just watched her, like he was waiting. She had no response, so she left without one. By the time lunch came around, Dara was edgy. She sat with Chloe and the others, half listening to their conversation, nodding at the right moments. But inside she felt wrong. Like the mask wasn't fitting quite right anymore. Like she was balancing on a wire that was fraying beneath her feet. Dara, she blinked. Chloe was staring at her. What? Chloe frowned. Are you okay? Dara's stomach clenched. She forced a bright smile. Of course. Chloe didn't look convinced. You're just quiet today. Dara let out a dramatic sigh. God, I can't even have a chill day without being accused of being weird. Chloe laughed. Just like that, the moment passed, but it lingered in Dara's chest, heavy, suffocating, because the truth was creeping in, whether she wanted it to or not. That night, Dara arrived at the Westons' house like always. She changed into her hoodie behind the gas station, threw on sneakers that were falling apart at the seams, and caught the 4:30 bus. When she knocked, Mrs. Weston barely glanced at her. You're late, she said flatly. Dara wasn't, but she didn't argue. Lucy and Adam were already screaming at each other in the playroom. Dara stepped in, mediated the fight, forced herself to be the responsible, controlled version of herself that the Westons expected. And for a while it worked. She played the part, until Mrs. Weston's voice cut through the air. Dara, don't forget to wipe down the counters this time. Last time was sloppy. Sloppy. Something snapped. Dara turned slowly, gripping the sponge so hard it hurt. Excuse me? Mrs. Weston barely looked up from her phone. "I said don't be sloppy." Dara's jaw clenched. She wasn't sloppy. She was holding up a damn empire. She was keeping her entire world together with her bare hands, while Mrs. Weston sat in her perfect house and judged her. Dara's voice came out cold. "I didn't forget." Mrs. Weston paused. For the first time, she actually looked at Dara. "You're being rude." Dara's heartbeat pounded in her ears. "No," she wanted to say. "You're being rude. You have no idea what my life looks like. You have no idea what I go through just to survive." But instead, she swallowed hard and said nothing, because at the end of the day, Mrs. Weston wasn't wrong. Dara was the help, and the help didn't get to talk back. By the time Dara left, she felt numb. She walked to the nearest bus stop, arms folded tight, head down. It was raining. Because of course it was. She sat down on the metal bench, shivering, exhaustion pressing down on her like a weight she couldn't shake. Then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "Tom Mercer. How's work?" Dara's chest tightened. She almost ignored it, almost threw her phone into the street because screw him, screw everything. But instead, she typed 2 words. "It sucks." And for the first time, Dara told the truth. Chapter 9. The Breaking Point. Dara stared at her phone long after she sent the text. It sucks. 2 words, simple, true, and yet they unraveled her. For years she had curated every piece of her life, every story, every carefully chosen phrase. She had built herself out of lies, out of smoke and illusion. And now she had told the truth. To Tom Mercer, of all people. Her screen lit up again. "Tom, I figured." Dara swallowed hard. She shouldn't have answered, shouldn't have engaged. She was supposed to be winning, but instead she sat in the rain, feeling like she had already lost. By the next morning, Dara was on edge. She told herself she was fine, that last night had just been a moment of weakness, a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But then she walked into school, and the whispers started. "Did you hear?" "Yeah, Chloe told me." "That's crazy, right?" Dara's stomach clenched. She picked up her pace, heading toward the lockers where Chloe and the others were already waiting. Chloe spotted her first. "Oh my God, Dara, hey! Did you hear?" Dara forced a smile. "Hear what?" Chloe leaned in, eyes wide with excitement. "Apparently someone found out where Tom Mercer actually lives." Dara blinked. "What?" Chloe nodded, grinning. "Yeah, turns out he's not some mysterious rich kid. He's staying with family because his parents basically abandoned him." Dara's throat tightened. The words rushed in too fast, too sharp. "He's living with his uncle now," Chloe continued, lowering her voice. "People are saying his dad was a total deadbeat, like, never home, never cared. And his mom, she just left one day and never came back." The ground felt unsteady beneath Dara's feet. She knew what it was like to live a lie, to tell a prettier version of a much uglier truth. And now, someone had done it to him. Dara opened her mouth, but Chloe kept talking. "I mean, I guess it makes sense why he's so weird, right?" She laughed lightly, like it was all just funny gossip. Something inside Dara snapped. "Shut up!" The words fell out before she could stop them. Chloe froze. So did everyone else. "What?" she asked, confused. Dara's fingers curled into fists. "You don't know anything about him." Chloe blinked, then laughed awkwardly. Dara, are you seriously defending Tom Mercer right now?" Dara's pulse pounded. Yes. No. She didn't know, but she knew what it felt like to have people talk about you like you were a character in someone else's story. And she hated it. Chloe gave her a funny look. "I mean, you're the one who told everyone he was obsessed with you. Why do you care if people are talking about him?" Dara's stomach dropped, because Chloe was right. Dara had started this. She had turned Tom into the villain before he could do it to her. And now, the rumor mill had twisted the story in a way she never expected. And the worst part? She didn't know how to stop it. Dara found Tom sitting alone outside near the back of the school. She didn't hesitate. She marched right up to him, heart pounding, fists clenched. Tom glanced up, completely unfazed. "Well, if it isn't my favorite compulsive liar." Dara ignored the comment. "Did you hear?" Tom shrugged. "About my tragic backstory?" Dara winced. Tom stretched out his legs, still calm, too calm. "Don't look so guilty, Dara. This is what you do, isn't it?" Dara's stomach twisted. "I didn't start it," Tom cut in. "Sure, but you did make me the villain first." Dara inhaled sharply. He wasn't wrong. Tom let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You know what's funny? The real story is a lot less dramatic. My parents aren't some tragic failure. They just travel for work. I'm here for convenience. But now I'm the abandoned kid with a sob story. All thanks to you." Dara felt sick. For once, she didn't have a quick response. No witty comeback. Because this time, she had no way to win. Dara had spent her whole life making sure no one ever saw through her. And now, standing in front of Tom, she realized she had done to him exactly what she had always feared someone would do to her. She had rewritten him, turned him into something he wasn't, and the worst part, she had done it without even thinking. Tom pushed off the wall, brushing past her. "Congrats, Dara, you finally got what you wanted." Dara's throat burned. She wanted to deny it, to lie, but for the first time in her life, she couldn't. Because the truth was staring her right in the face, and it was uglier than any lie she had ever told. Chapter 10. The Decision. Dara had always thought the worst thing in the world was being exposed, that if people knew the truth about her, knew where she really came from, what her life actually looked like, she would disappear. But now, standing alone in the school hallway, knowing that she had done the exact thing to Tom that she had always feared for herself, she realized she had been wrong. The worst thing in the world wasn't being exposed. It was being the person who did the exposing. And she had done it without even thinking, without even caring, until now. And now, she didn't know how to fix it. Dara skipped her next 2 classes. She couldn't sit in a classroom, couldn't pretend everything was fine. Instead, she walked the familiar streets, passing the gas station where she changed into her hoodie every afternoon, the laundromat where she slept when it rained, the back alley where she hid when the world felt too heavy. She had spent so long running from the truth, and now, for the first time, she had to face it. She had to make a choice. By the time the final bell rang, she was already at the bus stop. She had made her decision. But before she could go through with it, a voice stopped her cold. "Dara?" She turned, and there he was, Tom Mercer, standing with his hands in his pockets, watching her like he already knew why she was here. Dara exhaled slowly. "Are you following me now?" Tom smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ironic, isn't it? She swallowed hard. God, she hated this. She hated the way her chest felt tight, the way her carefully built walls felt paper thin around him. She hated the way she had spent her whole life manipulating people, and now she was just a girl who had done something awful, and she had to own it. Dara inhaled sharply, then, before she could talk herself out of it, "I'm sorry," she said. The words felt foreign in her mouth. Tom raised an eyebrow. "For what? Be specific." Dara clenched her jaw. He wasn't going to make this easy. Fine, she deserved that. "For lying about you," she admitted. "For turning you into a story." Tom's expression didn't change. "Why'd you do it?" Dara let out a short, bitter laugh. "Because that's what I do, Tom. I tell stories. I make things up. I control the narrative." Tom studied her. "And now?" She hesitated. And then finally, "Now I think I don't want to be that person anymore." Tom's gaze flickered. For the first time, there was something in his expression that wasn't just amusement, wasn't just knowing. Something that looked like understanding. "Okay," he said simply. Dara frowned. "That's it? You want me to make you grovel?" Tom asked, smirking. "I could if you want." Dara rolled her eyes. "You're impossible." "And you're a compulsive liar," Tom shot back. "But I guess we all have our flaws." Dara shook her head, half smiling despite herself. She had expected anger. Instead, she got this. And maybe, for the first time, that was enough. "So what now?" Dara asked. Tom shrugged. "That's up to you." And for the first time in years, she realized she actually had a choice. Not just in what to say, but in who to be. She looked at Tom, the boy who had seen through her from the start, the boy who had every reason to ruin her and didn't, and she made a decision. "I think I'm done lying," she said softly. Tom smiled. "Guess we'll see." Dara laughed. "Yeah, I guess we will." And just like that, for the first time in her life, Dara Hayes walked away from a conversation feeling lighter, feeling real. Chapter 11. The New Dara. Dara Hayes had spent years crafting a life that wasn't real. She had told stories so many times that even she had started believing them. She had rewritten herself into someone people admired, envied, adored. She had made herself untouchable. But the thing about building walls that high, at some point they start to crack. And now she was finally ready to let them fall. The next morning, Dara didn't feel like pretending. So when Chloe spotted her at the lockers and immediately launched into gossip mode, Dara felt a strange, unfamiliar exhaustion. "Dara, oh my God," Chloe said, barely pausing to breathe. "You'll never believe what Sarah told me about Alex, and I don't care." The words came out before she could stop them. Chloe blinked. "Wait, what?" Dara sighed. "I just don't care. About whatever rumors going around today. About what Alex did or didn't do. About any of it." Chloe stared at her like she had grown a second head. "Are you feeling okay?" For the first time in years, Dara wasn't sure how to answer that question, but eventually she just said, "Yeah, I think I am." That afternoon, Dara walked out of school without a performance. No forced laughter, no exaggerated stories, no perfectly curated lies. She just walked. And when she saw Tom Mercer leaning against his car, waiting for her like he knew she'd come to him, she didn't roll her eyes. She didn't put on a show. She just walked right up to him. Tom looked at her. "You look weird." Dara smirked. "Gee, thanks." Tom shrugged. "I mean, it's weird seeing you when you're not, acting." Dara thought about that. "Maybe I'm done acting." Tom's lips twitched. "I'll believe it when I see it." Dara tilted her head. "Then I guess you'll just have to stick around and find out." Tom huffed a laugh. "You're impossible." "And yet, here you are," she teased. Tom rolled his eyes, but he didn't argue, because they both knew the truth now. And for the first time, that was enough. That night, Dara sat in the back corner of the laundromat, staring at her reflection in the window. She was still the girl who had nothing. She was still the girl who lied to survive. She was still the girl who had no home, no security, no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time, she wasn't pretending. She was just Dara, and maybe, for now, that was enough. Her phone buzzed. "Tom, you still at work?" Dara hesitated. Then for the first time, she told a lie that wasn't really a lie. "Dara, no, I'm home." And for the first time, she almost believed it. Chapter 12. The Truth No One Knows. Dara sat on the cold metal bench outside the gas station, pulling her hoodie tighter around herself. She should have gone back to the laundromat. It was late and she was tired, but she wasn't ready to be alone. Not after the week she'd had. Not after realizing that lying doesn't fix anything. Her phone buzzed. "Tom, you good?" She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Then, slowly, she typed. "Dara, not really." She hit send before she could talk herself out of it. A few minutes later, Tom's car pulled up to the curb. He rolled down the window, looking at her. "Get in." Dara should have hesitated, should have made some kind of sarcastic comment, but instead, she just got in. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the city lights flickering outside the window. Dara stared at her hands. She had never told anyone. Not Chloe, not teachers, not social workers. And yet, somehow, she knew she was about to tell Tom. "She got sick when I was 15, Dara said, voice quieter than she expected. Tom glanced at her. "Who?" "My mom." She forced herself to keep going. It started small, a cough, fatigue, but it got worse, fast. Doctors didn't know what was wrong at first. By the time they figured it out, it was too late. Tom didn't say anything. He just listened. "She was all I had," Dara continued. "I never knew my dad. It was just the two of us. And then, suddenly, it wasn't." Her hands clenched into fists. "She went into hospice a couple of months ago," she said, swallowing hard. "At first, I stayed with a neighbor, then a friend's family. But I wasn't theirs. I was always an extra person, another mouth to feed. Eventually, people stopped offering. She thinks I still live with someone great. I don't, though. I don't live anywhere." Tom's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I told myself I'd figure it out," Dara admitted. "That I'd stay in school, keep my grades up, work, save money, get through it." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "But do you know how hard it is to rent a place when you're a broke 18-year-old with no family, no credit, and no one to co-sign?" Tom's jaw tensed. Dara shook her head. "So I lied. I made my life sound better than it was because I couldn't stand the way people looked at me when they knew the truth." She turned to face him. "And now you know." Tom pulled the car into an empty parking lot, shifting into park. Then he looked at her. "Dara," he said, voice steady, certain, unshaken by everything she had just admitted. "We're fixing this." Dara blinked. "What?" "You need a place to live," Tom said. "I know someone." The next morning, Tom took her to a house on the edge of town. It was old, the kind of place that creaked with history, tucked behind overgrown hedges, and sitting on the front porch, wrapped in a knitted shawl, was a little old lady drinking tea. "Dara," Tom said, nodding toward her. "Meet Miss Callahan." Miss Callahan squinted at her, then smiled. "So you're the one in need of a home." Dara hesitated. Yeah, but I don't have much money and—" Miss Callahan waved a hand. "I don't need money, dear. I need company, and someone to fix the sink in the garage apartment." Dara's breath caught. The words garage apartment felt too good to be true. "It needs work," Miss Callahan warned. "But if you're willing to put in the effort, you can stay as long as you like." Dara stared at her. "Why would you do this for me?" Miss Callahan's expression softened. "Because once upon a time, someone did it for me." Dara felt her chest tighten. She had spent so long believing she was alone, that no one in the world would ever care about her just because. And now, for the first time in her life, someone was offering her a home. She turned to Tom. You set this up?" Tom shrugged. "Told you. We're fixing this." Dara inhaled sharply, and for the first time she thought maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. A week later, Dara stood in the doorway of her mom's hospice room. Tom was beside her, quiet, steady. Miss Callahan had insisted on coming too. Her mother looked so small in the bed, eyes tired but warm when they landed on Dara. "You found a place," her mom said softly. "Tom told me." Dara glared at him. "You told her before I did?" Tom smirked. "Had to make sure you were really going to take it." Dara rolled her eyes, but she couldn't stop the small, real smile that tugged at her lips. Miss Callahan stepped forward, resting a hand on her mother's arm. "You don't have to worry about Dara," she said gently. "I've gotten quite used to having her around. She has a place for me as long as she wants one." Dara's breath hitched. Her mother's eyes welled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Miss Callahan squeezed her hand. "She'll never be alone again. I promise." Dara's throat burned. For so long she had thought hope was something for other people, something she would never have. But now she did. And for the first time, she almost believed it. A month later, Dara sat on the steps of her new home. The garage apartment wasn't perfect. The pipes still groaned in the morning, and the walls needed paint. But it was hers. Miss Callahan sat beside her, sipping her tea. "You know, you don't have to keep waiting for everything to fall apart." Dara glanced at her. "What do you mean?" Miss Callahan smiled knowingly. "Sometimes when life finally gives you something good, you don't trust it. You wait for it to be taken away." Dara swallowed hard. "That's all I've ever known." Miss Callahan reached over, squeezing her hand. "Not anymore." Dara let out a slow breath. Maybe hope wasn't something that just happened. Maybe it was something you had to choose, and sitting there on the steps of a place she could finally call home, Dara made that choice. She chose hope, and for the first time in her life, it felt real.